Entrepreneur, founder, author, and financial advisor Mark Bernstein helps high-performing business owners turn their visions into reality. At March Forward, Mark and his partners and associates think out of the box to partner with their clients in regards to their visions for their lives, their businesses, and their legacies. And through his innovative work with the Forward Focus Forums, Mark connects entrepreneurs to resources that help to fuel their success. Founders Forum is a radio show and podcast where entrepreneurs share their journeys, reveal the stories behind their successes, and the lessons they've learned. Join Mark and his guests for a mix of inspiration, valuable insights, and a bit of fun. Now let's dive in.
Good morning, America. How are you? Welcome to Founders Forum. I hope it's a beautiful day in Philadelphia. I can tell you we're broadcasting today from Southwest Florida, and the weather is gorgeous here. It's going to be about 80 degrees and perfect weather today. And I have in the studio with me my friend Tony, and we'll talk about that in a second. I'll formally introduce him. But because we're going to tell the story of a family, but not necessarily a family business, but a business that includes family. And as a result, we also have Pete, Tony's dad, on the line. In fact, why don't I do this first? I don't usually do this first. But let me introduce Tony, and Tony will introduce Pete. And then our topic for the day is family. So I'm going to just have you guys comment on that, how it relates to our story today. So Anthony F. Naccarato, P-E-S-E, is chairman and CEO of O'Donnell Naccarato Structural Engineers. He is a lifelong resident of Philadelphia, graduate of Villanova University's College of Engineering, like his dad, and as you'll find out, and has spent his entire professional career working as a consulting structural engineer at O'Donnell Naccarato, holding every position from entry-level, mailroom, not quite the mailroom, to chairman and CEO. He was born and raised in the Tacony section of Philadelphia, for you Philadelphians listening, where he lived for 56 years and now lives in Bella Vista section, which is in South Philadelphia, where his wife Kathy was born and raised, and they've been living there since July of 22. They have been together, he and Kathy, for 40 years and married for 35 of them. They have two children, son Pete, who's married to Maddie, and two sons. They have two sons, Anthony and Declan, and Grace is married to Chris with their daughter Amelia. So welcome, Tony, and welcome, Pete.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be here.
So on the subject of family, why don't you start, and then we'll have your dad chime in on that.
Okay. Happy to do it. Family in our family means everything. As I mentioned, spending all that time growing up in Tacony, the biggest reason I never left is because my family was there. The reason my parents met was because their families were there. They met in first grade and started dating in seventh grade. And so it was a community. It was a place where our immediate family lived, our cousins, all of our friends, again, a lot of immigrants and immigrant families from Calabria. And we created this wonderful community around our parish church, Our Lady of Consolation. And no matter where you were, no matter who you were with, the sense of belonging was palpable and really spoke to, again, wanting to stay there. And in terms of the business, to join my father, the greatest mentor I've ever had in my life, not just personally, but of course professionally, to follow in his footsteps, to help to build the brand that he and Bill O'Donnell, rest his soul, started from scratch basically, and have built it into one of the premier engineering firms, structural engineering firms in the country, has been an honor for me.
And it is quite a story of the firm itself. Pete, do you have anything you'd like to add about what family means to you, and or the fact that your son is now the CEO and chairman of the company that you built?
Yeah, sure. I'll take it back to pre-Anthony Tacconi. He's right. It was a place where he really had roots. The roots went all the way back to Italy, really. And the family met everything. And as he said, I met my wife in first grade. We've been married 60 years. And Anthony is the engineer that he is because of me, but he's the man that he is because of his mother. And I was fortunate in finding a partner in business that was similar. He had the same background as I did. We both had wives that understood that if the business was going to succeed, they had to take care of everything else. And I mean everything. Bill and I did 12, 14-hour days, 6 days a week. It doesn't leave a whole lot of time for changing diapers and midnight feedings.
Right.
So the wives gave us the freedom to really concentrate on this business. Also in the neighborhood, I guess inadvertently is where I picked up my business acumen, because my grandfather, my father had a little neighborhood mom and pop store, and they always preached to me that only the family works the cash register. The customer's always right. And if the customer wants something we don't have, we'll go get it. So I had that attitude. Fast forwarding, around 1961, I met Bill O'Donnell on the campus of Villanova. And in 1981, we started our business. So we were close personal friends for 20 years. We were in each other's weddings. We're godfathers to each other's children. And so all of that background really made the creation of this great business possible. We had infinite trust in each other. We didn't worry about what the other guy was doing. We just knew he was doing the right thing. I knew that Bill would do what I would do in a situation, and he knew I would do what he would do in a situation. So we were never looking over our shoulder. We were always moving forward.
That's wonderful. I'm going to stop you there because that's a great comment on family. And I just want to comment that this show means a lot to me because, first of all, Tony and I met at the Union League of Philadelphia by accident, and we now play in a band together. We play music, and he's become a close friend over a short period of time. And I think one of the reasons why, from my perspective, that was an easy friendship is because your story resonates so much with me. I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up, in the suburbs. Ultimately, we moved out of the city early, but in a parish. A lot of my friends were Catholic. A lot were Italian. I grew up with a lot of Italians. My wife is Italian, and her family story, there's some similarities in that. She actually grew up, I don't think I've told you guys, in construction business. Not her extended family were Masons. And so there's a lot of overlap, and it feels like home to me to hear your story. So it's a really great, and I appreciate, Pete, that you already talked about how you and Bill met and the beginnings. But let's jump ahead to you worked as a structural engineer, and you worked on one really great formative project that advanced you. And then we'll kind of talk about how you and Bill got together to finally start a business after all those years.
When Bill and I graduated, we worked with the same engineering company. He got drafted. I moved on to other firms, always in Philly. I worked on things like Children's Hospital out at Civic Center Boulevard, Oxford Valley Mall, King of Prussia Mall, a lot of big jobs in Philly. And when Bill returned from the service, we got together with an older engineer and worked with him for a few years. Then Bill and I moved out on our own, as I said, in 1981. And we actually started with 3 people, Bill, me, and my wife's cousin, who had just graduated from high school. She was 18 years old, and she was our staff. And coincidentally, just a year or so ago, she retired from O&N as the longest-serving employee. So Teresa had one job her entire life.
After how many years was that? How many years was she there?
Let's think about it. She started in 81. Wow. She She retired in 24.
Oh, there you go. So
do that math, like 41 years, right?
44 years.
44 years, 43, 44 years.
Wow. Amazing.
Yep. She did she was kind of a backbone of the company. She knew every client's job number by heart, things like that. She made it run. And I'm jumping ahead, but because of the way we left the company, Bill and I, we created an ESOP, and that enabled Teresa to retire with quite a nest egg, a lot of money in addition to her 401k. So things worked out good.
That's amazing.
So that's how we got started. Three of us in the Bourse building, which was also one of our projects. We worked on the renovation of the Bourse, and that was our first office location.
For those outside of Philadelphia, these are like all iconic children's hospitals, iconic Bourse buildings, iconic.
Yes.
These are King of Prussia Mall is one of the biggest shopping centers in the USA. These are major projects that you worked on.
Yeah, St. Christopher's Hospital, and then all the major renovations in the city, the Wanamaker Building, the Lit Brothers Building. Philadelphia was good to us. There was a lot of work there at one time, but fortunately that laid the foundation so that you could move out to where other work, what Anthony's doing now, out of the country. I mean, out of the city.
Now you're in 10 cities, is it?
Yeah, we just expanded into our 10th city, into the Raleigh-Durham area just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we'll jump ahead, but yeah, it's a national firm now. So tell me about, the joke on the show is I always say to people, so you start a business and it's smooth sailing from there, which of course it's not, right? So what kind of challenges did you and Bill have starting out the business? What kind of things did you have to overcome to gain success in the enterprise?
Well, we were the new guys on the block. We generationally we followed all of the World War II vets who had come back and started businesses. They were the old respected guys, but just like every generation, they were kind of stuck in a technology that they were comfortable with, and we were breaking in with the computer, which was unheard of. The slide rule was the only calculating tool anyone had ever had. The drafting, the making of drawings was entering the computer era. So we had to convince our major clients were our architects, and the relationship between an architect and a structural engineer is kind of like the Lone Ranger and Tonto. You stick together. You have to be able, as one Alec Ewing told me one time, I like my structural engineer because he permits me to sleep at night, because structural engineering is an incredibly serious business. The buildings fall down, people get killed, kind of a thing, and
right.
So you establish these bonds and these trusts. So for Bill and I to break into that, I mean, the time was right. These other guys were reaching retirement age, but still, to convince an architect who has been using one structural engineer for 20 years, 30 years, that these two kids are going to do it bigger and better and cheaper and all those things, took a lot of schmoozing, a lot of you had to stick to it. We had to understand that no didn't really mean no, that we could go back and take a second bite, and it would happen. We'd start getting the phone calls that my old reliable engineer really is not comfortable with this new technique or this new system or whatever, and little by little we broke in, but we created that reliability and that allowing them to sleep at night, knowing that our buildings were going to stay up.
So it was change in technology were major challenges. We've got to take a quick break, and we will be right back on Founders Forum.
Every great building starts with a strong foundation. O'Donnell Naccarato is a national employee-owned structural engineering firm partnering with architects, owners, and developers across every major market sector. Their work spans structural engineering, repair and restoration assessments, and design, parking, and functional planning. From early concept through construction, O&N is known for practical problem solving, clear communication, and a collaborative approach that keeps projects efficient and well coordinated. Learn how O'Donnell Naccarato supports the structures that shape our communities at o-n.com.
We are back on Founders Forum with our guests today, Pete and Tony Naccarato. And we've heard about the beginnings of O'Donnell and Naccarato Structural Engineers and Pete and Bill O'Donnell's founding of the company. And for the sake of time, time goes quickly on the show. We're going to jump ahead to Tony in the late 80s entering the business and talking about the development from there. And we'll include both you guys in the conversation to see it through.
Great.
So Tony, tell us about that.
Yeah, I graduated Villanova 1988, followed my dad there, got a degree in civil engineering, and started in July 5th of 1988. I think it was my dad's same starting date when he graduated. And I was an entry-level engineer. I mean, yeah, I took engineering classes. Yes, I had a degree in engineering, but everything, started that day, learning the craft of designing buildings. And of course, you start at the entry level, you check shop drawings, you review calculations, you review drafting that was done by the professional drafting folks. But I literally have started on the bottom and begun to rise through the business.
I just want to comment real quick. It wasn't a given that you were going to end up running the firm.
Not in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I mean, just because and I always tell people, it's, I say O'Donnell Naccarato, and they say, oh, it's your name's on the door. And I'm like, well, no, that's my dad's name on the door.
Right.
I'm just here to steward it, to shepherd it, and to grow it.
But that wasn't even part of the plan.
Back then, it was. I was married in 1990. I had a kid in 1992, and I was working. Same thing, 50, 60 hours, getting paid overtime to raise my family, right? To provide for my family.
Right.
So, maybe I had goals and aspirations, but that's literally all they were. And there were other, I wasn't the only capable engineer there. There were people that were older than me that had been there longer, that were certainly people that were my leaders, people who I was learning from. So yeah, in those early years, it was get the job done.
So just to frame it, this is a story of family and business together, not a family business necessarily.
No, it's not a family. It's not like, my dad owned 100% and he was going to hand me 100%.
Wasn't like that.
In fact, we changed we'll talk about the ESOP and how we did it.
Yeah.
But I always had, again, a special connection to this business because my dad was my dad, and Bill O'Donnell, believe it or not, was Uncle Bill. Because Italians don't call older people by their first names.
Right.
So he was Uncle Bill. Now I stopped calling him Uncle Bill when I started working there. But he was that close to me personally as an individual. And so, and we were much smaller back then. So it felt like a family firm, but it wasn't. And we we used to call ourselves a family firm because we treated our employees so well, because that's when you have a professional services firm. That's about all you have.
I think many of your customers recognize that too.
No doubt about it. We treat them like extended family.
Yep. Good. So talk about the progression and how you became into the leadership.
Yeah. So I kept, look, you have to work 4 years under a professional engineer to become licensed. I became licensed in, I think it was 1992 or 93. So when that happens, you can take on a lot more responsibility. You can put your seal on a set of drawings for submission for building permits and whatnot. And you become you're in responsible charge of that project. So I started to deal more with clients. I enjoyed dealing more directly with clients. If I got my engineering prowess from my dad, I got my gift of gab from my mother. I always liked to not be the prototypical engineer. Did you ever hear the one, how do you know an extroverted engineer?
No.
He's looking at your shoes instead of his own.
That's great.
I never wore shirts with pockets because I didn't want to have the pocket protector. I wanted to be a businessman,
right?
Whose craft or whose service was engineering. And so I really moved to be an outside person quickly, probably more quickly than a lot of other engineers my age.
And what in other businesses we call a rainmaker.
Yeah, because not only was I able to continue winning work from the clients who I was handling them well, making sure all of their needs were met, because most of our work is repeat work, Mark. I mean, we get a client, we do a good job, there's a very good chance we're going to get their next job and their next job. And I would say 90% of our work in any given year is from repeat clients. But I also had the ability to go into a room where I didn't know anyone to try to convince someone who wasn't working with us to use us and to give us a shot.
So you're basically sales, marketing, and engineering at this point are your roles.
Doing it all.
Right. So, and when did that transition into leadership?
So 1998 was when we decided to begin, when Bill and my dad decided to start ownership transition. And they started it in a very traditional stock bonus 5-year plan from 1998 to 2003. So I became a principal of the firm. I became one of the top four people in the firm who were, quote unquote, running the firm. Bill and Pete obviously were still there, but again, they were now moving up to even higher levels, developing relationships with the clients of our clients, really trying to build our brand and reputation beyond just our current clients. And the day-to-day business, the day-to-day operation, kind of fell to the four of us. And that was fine. It worked fine, but through your business, when you do stock transitions like that, the entity that makes out the best
right
is the government,
right?
Because it's taxable, and
yep.
And we're not getting the benefits as the new owners really, because the cash is going towards tax. And we went through that, and I guess this is where I'll hand it back to Dad if he wants to comment. I believe they sat in a meeting with Chuck Pennoni Engineering, one of the most prolific engineering firms, again, founded by a Philadelphian.
Right.
And he had just started his ESOP, employee stock ownership plan, ownership transition. And the basic premise of that is, in that deal, $1 stays $1, right, instead of turning into like 40 cents because of all the government.
Right.
And that was enticing. And in 2003...
ESOPs, because I've worked on some with my clients, are great for the owners.
Great for the founders.
Great for the founders, but also great for the employees.
I think it set the firm up for success. We didn't get bogged down in all of this cash, having to spend all this cash, raise all this money, make all this money, and send it to the government.
Right.
We become a tax-free entity. We were able to pay off the loan, that we had to borrow money to pay the founders and then pay that off. That was through 2003 to 2008, right before the financial crisis.
Yeah,
so we were
good
able
timing.
to, it was excellent economy. We were growing, and we were able to, I think by then, before I took over, really have us in good financial state.
Pete, did you want to comment any more on the transition to the ESOP?
No, generally what Anthony said is true. Bill and I got there the hard way, years of analyzing all these other methods. And while we were analyzing, we were hearing about other engineering firms that were transitioning, that their plans were all failing because the buyers worked hard, came up with a lot of money, and then at the end of the year, the money went to the government and to the seller. And we heard a lot of cases where the buyers just handed the keys back. And our accountant finally convinced us. He said the only way to not turn $1 into 40 cents is an ESOP. We were initially against that. It was like every employee would become our boss. So as Anthony said, we talked to Chuck Pennoni, who had already gone through it, and it was the best decision we ever made. It just, the transition was absolutely seamless. You didn't have to worry about keeping the clients getting word that the firm's changing. As far as the clients were concerned, there was no change at all. Same people, same responsibilities. Bill and I hung in for 10 years. Bill, I think, hung in for 5 or 8 years, and just slowly were able to comfortably transition clients who were very comfortable with me and Bill to getting very comfortable with the young guy.
One of the things I know one of the things I know about
earlier was the Lone Ranger and Tonto thing. We had to let the architects be as comfortable with new young people as they were with us. And it worked.
Well, one of the things I know about ESOPs is you have to have a strong leadership team for it to work. Right. If you don't, the whole thing blows apart. So
look, Mark, I had to personally make the decision and know that I was now not going to be the primary owner of this company.
Yep.
By that time, I had, we were moving in that direction. I was like, okay, I'm going to own a good chunk of this. Well, today I sit as a minority owner.
Right.
The ESOP owns most of the firm, and I'm a trustee of the ESOP. I have to work really every day to make sure that the participants in the ESOP trust are protected and that the stock value of the firm rises so that those ESOP participants get what they deserve as the owners of the firm. So
which is a good thing ultimately for yourself as well.
It's been good. I wrestled with it a little bit in the beginning. Most, all of us kind of did.
Sure.
But I think 23 years later, at 130 people in 9-10 states now, going on 11 probably in a little while, I think it's served us very, very well.
So we didn't really talk about your transition to CEO and chairman. So let's do that briefly because we only have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, so I'll be quick. 2013, I assumed the role of president and CEO, and my goal was to grow the firm. My vision was we needed to be, because we're structural engineers, we need to work on large, big, new construction projects. And every economy has its ups and downs, and Philadelphia in particular is notorious for it goes up. It's the last area to go up, and it's the first area to go down, and we're kind of in one of those situations right now. So I knew we needed to, and we always did. We always worked in North Jersey. South Jersey was a staple. We would go into Delaware. We would go up to New York when our clients would take us. But geography was a limitation, and I knew we needed to be more places. So we ended up in North Jersey with an office. That begot New York. We're in Manhattan. We had an opportunity in 2019 to buy a firm in Indianapolis, and now we're in Miami. We're in Orlando. We're in Raleigh-Durham. We're in Columbus, Ohio.
Real quick, in 30 seconds, tell me your 5-year vision, which is going to be hard to do.
We're in the middle of a 5-year strategic plan where growth is primary, and not just growth of the business, but growth of our staff, growth for them to rise through the firm, to become leaders, to provide opportunity, and to just continue to build the brand that again, I'm so proud of. I'm a steward of it. My name is not on the door. My dad's name's on the door.
Yep.
And as a family, it's important for me. I don't want to sell our firm to somebody else and lose our brand.
And you're a steward, which is a wonderful way to wrap it up. I do have one quick fun question we ask at the end. I'm only going to ask you one because we're musical friends and I don't know the answer to this. What's your favorite song?
Wow. Very hard, as you know, because I love so many bands. But I grew up on Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, as a guitar player, was a firm that, a band that I just fell in love with Jimmy Page.
It was a firm, too. But that's another story.
Yeah, later. Yeah. I love the Led Zeppelin song, What Is and What Should Never Be. It's a great blues song, and Plant's vocals in it.
We're going to listen to that again today. We're going to think about that.
Absolutely.
This is great. Pete, thank you so much for being here with us on Zoom today. It was wonderful to hear your story. I've loved the opportunity to get to know you a little bit. Tony, my friend, great to have you here in Florida with us. And thank you all for listening. And stay tuned next week for Founders Forum. And have a great day.
Founders Forum was brought to you in part by March Forward, LLC. We partner with entrepreneurs like you to assist in accomplishing your future vision, your life, your business, your legacy. Comprehensive wealth planning that starts with you, not a product. We hope you enjoyed your time with Founders Forum and that you found something of value to take with you throughout your day. Join us again next week for another episode of Founders Forum on WWDB 860 AM Philadelphia or on your favorite podcast streaming service. Securities offered through DFPG Investments, LLC. DFPG. Investment advisory services offered through Diversify Advisory Services, LLC. Diversify. DAS and DFPG are affiliated entities. March is unaffiliated with DAS and DFPG. Members FINRA/SIPC. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as investment advice. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Diversify or DFPG.